afternoon. So I'm Timothy Young, and I'm an author and illustrator, and I'm going to talk today about my success with my school success. I've been published now. Oh yeah, here we go. So these are some of my books up here physically as well, and I'm going to show a little bit after my presentation how my school visits work, but this is basically the opening slide to my school visits. But it all started for me with this one book that was published in 2008 called I'm Looking for a Monster. Now, this is my only book with a big publisher. It's with Random House. And after this book came out, I started doing what every author does. I started promoting my books. I went to book festivals, did some signings at Barnes and Nobles, did some readings, and somebody came up to me and said, "Hi, I'm a teacher. Do you visit schools?" I guess I do. Why not? So I got invited to visit a school and did one of my first school visits at a school in Maryland where I live. It was Dr. Seuss's birthday, and so I read my book. Now, my first book takes 2 minutes to read. What was I going to do for an hour with these kids? So I brought along my copy of Dr. Seuss's The Lorax, which is autographed by Dr. Seuss. I got a chance to meet him when I was in college. So I read that to the kids. That took a lot longer than my book. And I read some of my book dummies of books that were in progress that I was trying to get published. And happily, the school bought a whole bunch of copies of my first book that I signed for all these kids. So that was a great experience for my first school visit. And I started looking for more schools to visit. And slowly, over the years, I started visiting more and more schools. This was still on a small scale. I had one book. I started to add to my program. I started drawing pictures for the kids. It was a book about monsters, so I drew a lot of monsters. And then I remembered this thing that someone showed me when I was a kid about scribble drawings. And I started doing that with the kids. And I'd have the kids do a scribble, and then I'd turn that scribble into something. And I could do that for like an hour. The kids really enjoyed that, especially with the larger group of kids. But soon after I started doing school visits, I finally got some more books published. I got my book, They're Coming, and Shadows on My Wall came out in 2012, followed quickly by my book, I Hate Picture Books, which got me a lot of attention. This book really kind of put me on the map. And I got started getting invited to more and more schools. So I would do presentations in libraries, packed with a lot of kids. I developed a slideshow that I could put up on the screen behind me to show the pages of the book. I do big gymnasiums, multi-purpose rooms, and even some big auditoriums on big stages. Sometimes hundreds and hundreds of kids I'll be doing my presentations for. And yet it's still kind of an intimate thing. How did I build my program? So you can't just, go in and read your books and ask if anyone has any questions, and that's it. You gotta do a little more than that. Now with book readings, a lot of authors that I know say, well, I don't read my books when I go to school. I think, well, why not? I start each program reading 3 of my books. And the reason I do that is it kind of sets the mood, gives them an idea of who I am, makes them laugh a bit. And a lot of teachers have said to me afterwards, oh my gosh, the way you read your books is really fantastic. We never have time to read books to kids anymore. So it's really great that you get a chance to do that with them. I also do a drawing demo. I either draw one of my characters from one of my books, The Angry Little Puffin, Carlos from the book Untitled. I still draw some monsters on occasion. And I do this interactive drawing thing. So I went from using a pad, which was kind of hard to carry around. I found these whiteboards that have no frame on them, and I glue a handle to the back. And this past year I've been sticking the stickers that the schools make me wear onto the back. Now this is about half the schools I did last year. Not every school requires them. And I get to carry it around to the audience and the kids can draw on it from wherever they are, sitting, or in this case, a classroom. And then I find different things in the drawing. And it's a lot of fun. It's easy for me. I've got a good imagination. I see things in patterns, and the kids really like that. And then Q&A. What I realized was I really like answering kids' questions, but you can't just like talk the whole time. You need some visuals on it too. And I developed this slideshow. Now this slideshow I'm doing right here is just slide by slide by slide, which is what most slideshows are like. I found a way with Apple Keynote to do a non-linear slideshow. So I can click on any of my books and start reading them and show the visuals. I have this page that I've set up with a lot of the questions that a lot of the kids ask most often, and have some fun and funny visuals that go with them. This is and oftentimes when I bring this up on the screen, I say, don't read these, don't look at these are secret questions, which of course makes them read them. And then it has samples on it, so I can click on any one of these buttons and it'll highlight, and then I can talk about what I did before I wrote books. So I worked in animation, I did illustrations for magazines and greeting cards, I worked for the Muppets, and I worked in toy design. I was design director for 2 different toy companies. And if someone asks me to see some of this stuff later, I'll show it to you after our Q&A. So, some do's and don'ts about school business. Be interesting. You've got 45 minutes to an hour to do a presentation. You want to do something that the kids are really, really going to enjoy. You want to tell some fun stories, some interesting things about yourself. Talk about what you do, but relate it to them. I always tell the kids, when I was young, I loved, reading books and watching cartoons and playing with toys. And I thought, who got to make all this really, really cool stuff that I love? And as I grew older and realized artists and authors got to make this stuff, I set that as my goal, and I made that my career. So I've done all those things. I've made toys, and I've worked in animation, and I write books. Prepare more presentation material than you need. You don't want to run out of stuff to talk about after a half an hour. I have my slideshow, as I mentioned, the non-linear slideshow. I've got 10 hours of material in there. I could keep going forever. Oftentimes I'm in a situation where the teacher is flagging me saying, like, we gotta wrap it up, they gotta go to lunch. So make sure you have a lot of stuff to talk about. And let them ask lots of questions. Kids love being involved. The nonlinear slideshow allows me to steer the whole presentation depending on what they ask. And so each presentation I do is entirely different from the one before that and the one before that, because it really all depends on what your audience wants to know. And have fun and enjoy the experience, because anyone can do anything for 45 minutes. But if you really enjoy it, if you really, get into, I never expected to be a presenter, I never expected to be an entertainer of any kind. I was the creative guy behind the scenes doing fun stuff. But I found that I really enjoyed doing these presentations and assemblies. Some don'ts. Don't rush. Don't run through your stuff. Like I said, I have a lot more material than I need, but you don't want to get through everything that you wanted to say, and then, you've gone so fast that the kids really don't even know, remember what they wanted to ask. I start my Q&A immediately after reading my first 3 books, and then segue into some of the other segments I do, the drawing samples and things like that. Don't talk down to students. Students are people. Treat them like your peers, like you're just one of them, and they're going to really respond to that. Don't be boring. I saw an author once who I saw her school presentation, and she spent 20 minutes talking about all of her failures before she got her first book published. Hear that. They want to hear about your successes. They want to hear about the fun stuff. They want to hear about the interesting stuff. Don't be too rigid with your presentation. Don't start at A and you want to get to Z and nothing's going to interrupt you or stop you from getting to where you want to be. If you get a question that's out of left field, you want to stop and you want to answer that question. You don't want to just go on to what you were prepared. Don't be too demanding of your hosts. If a school's invited you in, you're there for the day. You're paid. You do whatever they want. If they want to have lunch with certain students, fine, do that. If they want you to talk to some of the teachers and the teachers lunch, do that. Just, make them know that you appreciate that they've hired you to come in to their school and disrupt their schedule and get their kids going. And it's an honor to be there. All right, so wait a minute. Not everyone has my background or my abilities. Not everyone's an illustrator. Not everyone's had my career to talk about. So aside from being an author, what makes you interesting? What would you talk to these kids about? If you've got one book, if you've got 2 books, that's not enough to fill a whole presentation. What kind of stuff can you tell them about what you've done in your life that they can relate to? Can you sing? Can you play an instrument? Can you do magic, juggle? Anything like that. If you can add that into your program, that makes for an interesting assembly. It's okay to wear a silly author costume. I had a friend, Lee Harper, he's illustrated a whole bunch of books about a turkey, and he made himself a giant paper mache turkey head to wear to some of his assemblies. And I told him, I said, I'm not making a puffy head. Don't make me do that. But that worked for him. Turn your book into a play. Bring the students up, have them act it out, make it a little bit longer than just reading the book. Bring along some silly hats for them to wear, something like that. These are all just, suggestions, things I don't necessarily do. But be fun and be creative, and you'll come up with a program that people are going to want to bring you in for. So how do you find schools that will book you? Well, I've done it a number of ways. Now, I'm on the book and author page, but as Yogi said, I'm one of the more expensive authors on there, so I haven't gotten a lot of bookings that way. But I have a big presence on social media. You can't just be on there saying, like, hire me or buy my book. You have to be engaging and funny and clever and do some fun stuff that people are going to follow you for. Book festivals. Go to book festivals, sitting at your table signing books. Odds are that an educator, a librarian is going to come along and you talk to them about visiting your schools. State librarian conventions are also great. I've been to state librarian conventions in New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, Virginia. It's a captive audience. They're there to find out what's going on in the industry. If you have a presence there, then they're likely to buy your books and hire you to come to their school. I usually do a giveaway too. I did a raffle to give away this artwork to a librarian, and the raffle helped me collect email addresses from all the librarians who can go to other conventions too. ALA, Comic-Con. My publisher always had a booth at Comic-Con for many years, and they invite me to come, and I would sign books.
Children's books as well, Comic-Con?
Mine did. Well, here's the thing. You never know who's going to be in the audience at Comic-Con. My books have, weird themes. I've got a space book. I've got some other stuff. But, so I had someone come up to me dressed as Wonder Woman, saying, I'm a 3rd grade teacher. So your students know they can dress as Wonder Woman. That's fine. And she bought some of my books for her class and, hired me to come to her school. People who come to the conventions are into all kinds of cool stuff, and they have careers too. Yeah. Bookstore signings and readings. This bookstore in Pennsylvania has a summer reading at a farm creamery, and this is me doing their presentation for that. And I got, out of this one, I got 11 schools in Delaware to bring me in for 2 weeks of presentations. And public library programs. Public libraries are always looking for authors to do programming, and a lot of the patrons of the library are also in the school system. Any questions? Okay.
This is more just kind of like starting a conversation, but when it comes to like the
So it's true that the younger kids don't often ask as many questions. Oftentimes, I will say to a school, like, I'll do 45 minutes for the younger kids and an hour for the older kids, because the older kids ask better questions and I can keep going for longer. But you can come up with prompts, like you were just saying. You ask them questions, they answer for you, and that can sometimes be the question. And a lot of it depends on the school you're listening to and how well they prepare their kids. Sometimes you go into a group and it's like, well, I like dogs. Well, I like dogs too. I like dogs, and that's what you get for the next 10 questions. And you just kind of got to change the subject, redirect them into something else. Maybe you end the Q&A at that point. And for me, I go into a drawing demonstration or something like that. You just have to keep things rolling. Now,
Something I thought was really cool, there was one school that did this, where they had actually given the responsibility to several students who had done really well or good behavior or whatever. And I thought about implementing this in the schools I go to. Here are 3 questions, find 3 students that will ask a question
Right.
during the presentation, and it was a reward kind of system.
Yeah, and you can sometimes do that with the teacher or librarian who set up the visit and, prep them ahead of time for the kinds of things that you're going to talk about, and ask them maybe in school, in class the day before, to have the students write down the question. And I often have the little kids, I find their teachers come in and they each have a piece of paper where they've written a question on it. Then some of them can read their questions and some can't.
Right.
It's okay.
Do you do a catalog to present to the school for free orders before you ever?
So for pre-ordering books, what I do is I send an order sheet to the school like a month or more in advance. That gets sent home to the families. I never put a minimum order on anything, but I usually sell up to 100 books every time I do a school visit. Seeing as I have 17 titles that they can choose from, there's always something from board books up to my first middle grade chapter book that I've written. So if something appeals, I often do, my programs for pre-K through 5th grade. I've done presentations to middle schoolers as well, and I've even done some presentations to high schoolers, more about creative careers than specifically about books.
My question is based on that. I'm really confident with my presentation itself.
Mostly the librarian that has, librarians are the ones that hire me most. Sometimes the principal, sometimes it's another educator. But they already know I'm coming. They've hired me. They want to, promote me, so they make sure that the stuff gets out. I get the occasional school that has forgotten to send it out. Again, I'm not going to not go to the school because no one ordered the book. And in those cases, I prepare an order form for afterwards that they can send. Because a lot of times the students will say, oh, I wish I could order a book. In that case, I send out a revised order form that leads them to a page on my website where they can order the books and then they'll be the money. And then I have the books shipped to the school after I've signed them. So it's something new I've been adding in the last couple of years because more and more schools are asking for that.
I have 2 questions. But one is, do you ever reach out to the school, or is it mostly you have people reaching out?
Oh, no, it's me.
Okay.
I'm reaching out to schools all the time.
Okay.
Very shortly, because August is when a lot of teachers and librarians are back in school, I'll be emailing my contact lists, getting in touch with schools that, like last year, they said, oh, we already have somebody, we're in maybe next year, so I'll remind them that they said that. I try to find out different schools hire authors at different times of the year. Spring is always a much bigger season than the fall, but even having said that, I know I've got some bookings coming out this fall already.
How do you determine your pricing for your author visits?
So when I started out, I was making maybe $300 to $350 for a day for a school presentation. I wasn't going very far, and I wasn't making a lot of money at it. And then over time, as you can, as you get a reputation out there for a good program, and people are recommending it, you can raise your prices. I'm up to about $1,400 for a day for a school visit, plus travel if it entails travel. Last year, I went all the way down to North Carolina. I live in Maryland. I drove all the way up to New Hampshire for a visit. So long as they cover my cost of my travel fee, I'll go anywhere, and if I'm not gonna lose money, I can go to Cincinnati. This December, I'll be flying down to Texas, for some schools down there. And, you know, and sometimes I'll discount if a school says, oh, we just can't afford that. How much can you afford? And if I get a school that, you know, if, let's say I book a school in Pennsylvania, I'll contact some other schools around them for that same week and say, hey, I've got these dates available, I can give you my regular rate without travel costs, because those are already covered.
With your order forms, are you emailing those to the teachers and letting them print them out or send them electronically?
So I send a PDF that some schools choose to print out, and other schools will just email it to the parents. They've done it both ways. And I'm, like I said about being flexible with your host, whatever their system, whatever they want to do, find your way to work with them, you know, because it's better than, you know, being confrontational, say, no, you have to do it my way, which is again why I never say that they have to order a minimum number of books. Oh, I don't sign at the school. Because I've learned that takes a lot of time, and you don't want to sit in a room with 100 kids standing in line waiting for you. I pre-sign all my books. So when I get the orders, I get the orders in like 2 weeks before my visit. I order the books to my publisher, and I sit at home and watch TV and sign my books, because I'm also the illustrator, so I draw a picture in every book. So it takes me a while to do it. So, and this way I show up at the school with a pre-signed, you know, with a drawing in each one. And that saves me a lot of hassle at being at the school. I just come in, do my presentations, give the librarian the books. Sometimes I help them sort them with the order forms. And, yeah.
When you pre-sign them, do you put their child's name?
Yeah, it's all on the order form. So what I do is I send, after I send the sheets for them to place the orders, I also include an Excel file that they can fill out and put the child's name, the teacher, you know, how much they paid. It's all laid out. And this way they just have to send me that form, you know, just after the due date that I put on the order form. And then I, you know, place the order and start signing.
That's all
Before I go to the school. Yeah. Yeah. So, because most schools, I mean, if a school were to call me up and say, can you come next week? I could do that. I'd be prepared to do that, provided my schedule's open. I wouldn't do the pre-sales on the books in that case. But usually schools are hiring me months in advance. So we've got plenty of time to generate the book order forms, send them, you know, let them know they should send them out 3 or 4 weeks ahead of my visit, start talking me up during that period of time. You know, most schools get excited, they have the kids. I have coloring pages on my website. I walk into a school and there's hundreds of pages that have been colored. They're excited, they know I'm coming. So there's plenty of time to organize it. And a lot of times, you know, I'll have the occasional librarian who has never done a school visit before, and they don't know what to do, and I tell them what to do. I talk them through the whole process, because I've done it so many times now. I mean, I've been doing this, I've been published for 18 years, I've been visiting schools for 17, and lately, well, I mean, COVID, of course, affected everyone. I completely lost a lot of contracts for schools I was supposed to visit, and tried to do online, virtual ones. I set up a really good virtual presentation, but nobody wanted to pay for it. So, you know, once COVID was over, I jumped right back into going to schools. I'm sorry.
So, just a quick, so you said you sent out the order forms a month out.
Yeah.
When do you ask the schools to give them to you, so you know how many?
It's usually about 2 weeks before my visit, because I know I've got to then place the order at my publisher, have the book shipped to me, and start signing them. So I need that, you know, the lead time.
So about 6 weeks, then a month for the order form to get there, and then the last 2 weeks is when.
Right, it comes back to me and places the order.
I just wanted to try.
I don't. I get enough that I can, you know, so normally, you know, because I do this from, you know, September through May, you know, I've made enough money that I can cover my, you know, costs for ordering my books to my publisher ahead of time. I've never been stiffed on anything. Again, the occasional bounce check. So I can front the money a little bit towards, knowing I gotta pay. For the business, no, I wait till the day that I come. Most schools do not wanna pay ahead of time. Occasional schools, I'm sorry.
Or even the day you come.
Yeah, sometimes you have to wait 2 or 3 weeks if they're going through like their administration to get you paid. But a lot of times it's the PTA. That's the other thing, it's like you never know who's paying the bill. PTA, the school might have a budget item, they have districts that they have to go through. It's different for each situation, and you just have to learn to put up with that. I've occasionally gotten a check like months in advance, and I don't like that. Because then that money is gone by the time I do the school visit. And so, yeah, no, I prefer waiting until presentation day.
How do they get the order forms back to you?
So like I said, they don't send the order forms to me, they send a spreadsheet, or occasionally they'll scan in all the order forms and email it to me or something like that. It's a mess, but that's fine. No, I ask them, I usually, just around the deadline time, I send them a spreadsheet, a sample spreadsheet that they can start filling out. A lot of them put it up on Google Docs and I can download it from there.
Do you have like a PDF, like a contract that you give to the schools,
Yeah.
describing like what you wanna do, or?
Yeah, and I use a pretty simple contract. A number of people have said, you really put more stuff in there. But yeah, no, I send a contract when they first, have a date set for when I'm gonna be there. And it includes my price, the day I'm gonna come, and what I require of the schools, which is usually just a projector and a screen or a smart board, depending on where I'm gonna be presenting, and a couple of other incidentals. And that's basically, all I've ever really needed to do.
Is there a situation where you would prefer a projector over something?
It depends really on, like in a room like this, a smart board is fine, so long as the kids can all see it. I don't really mind either way. Like I showed in some of the pictures, like sometimes I'm in a big room with a giant screen, which is kind of cool to have, and other times it's a very small smart board. Kids can go up front and get in close. So yeah.
What was your experience with insurance?
So I avoided insurance for a really long time, but no more.
It's not that expensive.
It's not that expensive. And I have a couple of vendors. I also work with a group in Maryland called Arts for Learning, and they require it. And it's fine. And what I've realized is that if I'm carrying around the smart board and I accidentally just whack somebody in the head with this, I need to have insurance for that. So it's never happened, but it could.
No blood, no foul.
Yes, right. Yes.
First of all, I just realized you visited Illustrator Elementary in Walkill this past spring, I believe. My daughter goes there, so although
nice.
New York, so that's cool. I just
Yeah.
sent her a picture.
Yeah, that was a great visit. I did 4 schools up there.
Awesome. So 2 quick questions. When you say you do, you ask for a fee for a day. Like I've done a few school visits, and basically they'll want sometimes they'll ask me, do I want to do a full assembly to include, multiple classes, and then that means you're only doing. They ask you about assemblies versus individual readings.
Yeah, I don't do classroom visits
Okay.
unless it's a workshop that has been prearranged. Usually this other group, Arts for Learning in Maryland, books me on sometimes in the schools for that. But I do assemblies, I say to the school that it's a day rate. I'll either do 2 or 3 assemblies for that money based on your schedule. Sometimes they want to jam it into 2 assemblies.
Gotcha.
Sometimes they, I prefer 3 because then the older kids, I can have more fun with them. I really like working with the 4th and 5th graders because they come in with the attitude of like, wait, this is picture books?
Yeah.
I can go.
Gotcha.
It's a lot of fun.
I have 2 questions. Earlier you mentioned a non-linear slideshow.
What do I say it?
Yeah.
So I use Keynote. So here. So this looks like the opening slide, but this is a presentation mouse. It's not just a clicker. And this is a new one for me because I got a new laptop and the old one is older USB. But what it allows me to do is I can go to any of my books and click on them and go to start reading I hate picture books. And if I decide I need to get out of it, there's a hidden button up here, I can go back here. If someone asks me a certain question, I can go down here and click, and that brings up the big board of questions that a lot of people ask me. And then I can go to any one of those. You know, like I said, I still have to practice with this thing a little bit better. But what did I do before I wrote books? I click on that. I can click on any of these.
But you said that was keynote?
Keynote for Macintosh. You can do the same thing with PowerPoint on the Microsoft platform, but this is Mac's own presentation program. And so I can then go to my toy design and show a whole bunch of toys that I've worked on over the years. I bring samples with me and hold them up to the crowd, but this way, if you're way in the back, you can see what I'm talking about. I was the first person to ever sculpt the Simpson dolls. Back when these were sold, when the show first started at Burger King, I had to figure out how to make their heads work in 3 dimensions. And these are the original sculptures for those. So I've had this long fun career. I got to sculpt one of the wild things from Wild Toys. And so, you know, this is all stuff that's in here. And like I said, at any point, I can then also get out of it.
The other question I had was, you mentioned insurance.
Yes.
What kind of insurance?
Presenters insurance, and I've got a policy with the Hartford, I think it is. And, you know, go to a local insurance broker, tell them what you're doing, and they'll find you a policy that works for you. The first time I decided to buy insurance was because the school system insisted. And I said, look, and at that point, I think it was $150, I checked into it. I said, look, you know, if you want to cover that, I'm happy to get the insurance. Otherwise, you know, you're not going to be able to hire me. And they did. And so that first year was covered because one school paid for it. But now I do enough businesses, enough schools that it's worth having. Yeah.
There's a company called Specialty Insurance Agency. They cover performers of all types.
Yeah.
If you look that up, they sell like performance insurance. SCDWI, the book an association. If you're part of that, they have a policy that you could buy into that's pretty like super cheap.
Yeah. That's true.
Performers insurance, presenters insurance.
Right.
Do schools sometimes ask for like a background check?
Yes, I just filled one out for Texas for January. I've been fingerprinted a few times. You know, I mean, if you haven't done anything, it's not a real hassle to do it. You know, some states and municipalities do it for free, others will charge a small fee, but it's usually good for a year, and it depends on, like, not all schools ask for it, and so you don't have to re-up it in that state every year. It's just when a school asks for a background check, then, you know, they'll tell you how to do it.
I had one other question. Do you prefer hardcover versus softcover when you're selling to students? How do you figure out?
So my books from my publisher are all hardcover, except for I have 2 how to draw books, Creatures and Characters, that are softcover. And that's the only way they publish. They considered doing paperbacks as well, but they never got around to doing it. And I said, so long as they don't get rid of the hardcovers, because school libraries like to have the hardcover books. So it's nice to have the hardcover books.
What's your new mouse?
Oh, yeah. So I had bought this presenter mouse. I got it on Amazon, and I altered it because it's very flimsy on its own. And I had done with my previous mouse, I just sewed a strap for fingers to the bottom, because when I'm doing a presentation, so let's go down. First I gotta find there it is. All right, so if I'm gonna read a book, I don't just rely on the screen, I also read the book in my hand. And so while I'm turning the pages, I can do that and hit that. And a lot of students, when they don't notice that the mouse is in my hand, ask, how did you magically turn the pages while you're reading the book? So it's, you know, it's very handy. I did. I have a whole, like, when I first came up with this idea, someone said, oh, it's like your Captain America shield. And I thought, yeah, maybe I should like make an author helmet or something, but I never went that far. So. And this one is funny. So normally I'll go through 2 or 3 of these a year, because eventually I'm gonna accidentally draw in a permanent marker, and there goes the whole day. But, this one amazingly has lasted from September through now, which is why I have so many stickers on it, because normally I'll get like 3 or 4 stickers on it before I have to toss it and glue another handle to another one. I get them on Amazon for like $12, or Hobby Lobby, they're occasionally there in the stores. So, it's all, the neat thing about doing this is really, there's not a lot of huge expense. Now, because I've been doing this for so long, I do bring redundant stuff with me. I'll bring a portable speaker in case the sound system isn't that great. I have a lavalier mic that I wear that I can plug into their system. I actually have 2 versions of it, depending on the situation. I have a spare laptop, my older laptop, with my program on it in case something goes wrong with my main laptop. So I do prepare for some redundancies. I was just saying earlier, I'll probably get my own LCD projector this year, because I have run into a couple of situations where theirs wasn't that great.
Just aside, I had an event earlier this year where my laptop had died the night before.
Right.
And so I didn't have spare laptops, I had to do it on my phone. I got a call in the middle of the presentation. Really what?
Yeah. And I have had situations over the years where the technology has failed. I can do my whole presentation without a really cool screen. I can read more books, I can do more drawing stuff. The kids don't know what they're missing. They didn't know what they were gonna see in the slideshow, so it doesn't matter. So long as you can cover yourself through the presentation period, it's fine. And that's what I was saying about preparing more than you need. It's like, be ready for any situation that might come up, And,
How do you handle, you may not run into this much anymore, but you've been doing it so long and on set reputation, but the schools that want you, but don't want to pay.
don't wanna pay at all?
Yeah.
Oh, well then no.
So like flat out, I mean, again, for you.
I can't afford to do a free school unless it's like a local school. I did my kids' schools for free when they were little. But yeah, they gotta be able to pay something. And I always tell people, because I also do like graphic design on the side. I work with a lot of nonprofits. I say, look, you're not gonna get money from me. I'm not gonna give you my stuff for free. But you're gonna get a donation from this guy who can't do graphics, and you're gonna pay me for the low price I'm gonna give you for my work on this. Same thing with the school district. I say to the school, fundraise, find a way to raise the money. If you wanna have an author, if you wanna have a good author come, you gotta pay. If you wanna have a local guy with one book about his dog, he's probably gonna do it for free, but you're gonna get a good private program. So, you gotta pay for.
So just be prepared to have other options for them.
Yeah,
as far
and I tell
as
schools,
find a local, whatever.
like if a school has 2 schools in the same system, I'll do 2 programs in the morning and 2 in the afternoon at each of the schools and give them my day rate. I've done that on occasion, but I can't sell myself cheap.
So do you do a lot of ongoing email marketing
Oh.
or is it just certain times of the year?
No, well,
or-
certain times of the year, yes, but I'll get in touch with schools if I find a new contact, I'll get in touch with them right away. Last year, I worked out a deal with another author, he and I traded our contact list, because we both charge about the same amount, cover the same, we're both, I'm an author illustrator, he hires author illustrators, but he does music stuff too, that I don't do, I can't sing, I don't want to hear me sing. So we traded contact lists, and I got a bunch of schools this year from his list, and he got a bunch from my list. And I'm thinking about a couple of other authors, we're all around the same level, we all, none of us has bestsellers on the New York Times list. We're all around the same celebrity level, if I'm a celebrity at all. So, it's good to know the schools that are looking for authors at about our price range.
One quick question.
Yeah, sure. I don't know how much time we have.
I know. Do you ever leave like a parting gift?
Oh, all the time. Yes, I do. So, I have a large format printer, I can do 18 by 13 print. I do a poster that says, that has a whole bunch of my book characters on it, and it says, thank you, such and such elementary, it was great reading books with you, and I sign it and put the date on it. And I buy these inexpensive frames at Michael's when they're on sale, buy one, get two free, so they're like $10 a piece. So a $12 investment, and that's hanging in a library in hundreds of schools around the country now. So, yeah, and you know, sometimes a new librarian will come in and they'll say, we got to put this back on. So I have done a number of repeat presentations. You can't do it too often. You gotta wait a couple of years until it's a new crop of kids. Because it's, you know, kind of the same program year after year. Well, thank you guys very much.